Jamie, it's great to be chatting.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for the accommodations here at Industrious.
We've had different members in different places set up podcasting sort of studios. This is my favorite I've seen.
Oh, well, I'm glad we have created your favorite. For those of you who are just listening to this, our podcast studio here, we've put together in a 8x8 room here at Industrious. But it's a comfy space. And we've had now the mayor of New York City, former Governor Cuomo, Pete Buttigieg. So we're trying to bring in interesting people into the space here.
I mean, I love that. And I think, I remember seeing basically it was like people leaving New York talking about their favorite apartment they ever lived in. And it was on WNYC, every single person's favorite apartment they ever lived in New York was the little shoebox in the West Village where their nightstand doubled as their dining room table. And so I'm actually a believer that for certain kinds of things, a really cozy space actually makes the space come alive.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about your evolution. What led you into real estate? Because as we got started here, you reminded me that you actually began your career. One of your first jobs was in journalism as well. What leads you to go from there and to eventually launch Industrious?
So that journalism was very early in my career. I learned Hindi in college, but my family's from Argentina. So it was like a real flyer to learn that language. And then I felt like, okay, I got to use this. So I moved to India to be a reporter for the Times of India. And I was like a fine journalist, but I knew I was never going to be a great one. So I eventually moved on. And when I launched Industrious with my best friend from growing up, I was actually running a university in East Africa. We had launched in Rwanda a $1,000 a year college.
So you go from a journalist in India to university in Africa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a corporate lawyer and worked at a hedge fund in between.
Okay.
But eventually I really wanted to do something to give back. So we launched this $1,000 a year university. And now there's multiple campuses. It's called Kepler. And I'm actually think about that a lot and I'm quite proud of that. But I missed the for-profit world. And I had a very important meeting with the president of IKEA, which was the biggest funder of Kepler at the university I was running. And it was in a shared workplace in New York. And at the last minute, I was so unhappy with the quality of the conference room and there were light bulbs out that I moved the pitch meeting with him to a Le Pen Quotidien, a coffee shop. And that night I was like, I cannot believe the most important meeting of my life. I'm paying for a workplace and I held it in a coffee shop because I wasn't proud enough of that workplace. There must be 50,000 companies that are small teams. So they want to take advantage of shared spaces and stuff that works for small businesses, but they want to be proud of their space. So my best friend from growing up had a similar experience. So we launched Industrious as a total side project. It was never meant to be anything more than a fun diversion, a cool thing for us to do together, make a little money. And it just really took off. There was really a white space for a more professional, more elegant shared workplace product. And now we're at 200 something locations.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sort of reminds me of the story of many startups, which is you were solving a problem. You encountered a problem and you're like, this experience sucks. I can make a better one.
I'm such a believer in that, especially if you have the sort of empathy to say, this is a problem that's for me. And it's not like I'm really into model trains and I don't know how to glue the wheel. Like if you're like, this is a problem for me and I know my friends and I know my family and I know my colleagues well enough to know that if there's a problem for me, it's got to be a problem for other people.
Tell me, you said you started the business with your best friend. Are you guys still best friends after all these years?
I feel so lucky to say, because that's not common. We are still absolutely best friends.
That was like, what, 12, 13 years ago?
Yeah, it was 13 years ago. And I mean, we have seen people we launched the business at the same time as who cannot even speak to each other anymore. And it's just like, that would be the most miserable, frustrating, sad thing for me if me and Justin's relationship had atrophied or been challenged by growing a business together. My experience, for whatever it's worth, has been the opposite. It really deepened that friendship. He feels in a lot of ways more like a sibling to me than even a friend because of the journey we went on together.
Any advice for people who have to encounter that? How do you mix friendship with business?
So first I'll say I have a ton of siblings. We grew up in suburban Detroit. He was an only child, so he spent almost every day at our house. So we went in with a very deep, very serious relationship, not like two people who met at Stanford Business School and think they're friends, but they've been friends for 4 months and it's a very thin tie. So that you can't recreate necessarily. Right. I think the advice I would give is we, from the first day, we're very deliberate about saying, it's almost like when parents say, we can't only talk about our kids, we can't only talk about work. So twice a year, we go on a friend/co-founder trip to Puerto Rico, to Iceland. We just went to Nova Scotia a few weeks ago. We go for 2 days and we just hang out and we don't talk about work. And that helps.
That's possible.
It's possible.
Wow.
So it's the same advice, again, people give to new parents. But I think anytime you're trying to navigate
right,
a relationship.
This is the same advice that was given to me and my wife when we had our first child, which is like, you can't make every conversation about the kid. Like, yes. Remember that there is a relationship there too.
Yes, you have relationships sometimes that have to serve multiple masters. They're doing multiple things at the same time. This is a friendship and a professional relationship. And within reason, having moments for both works better than trying to just completely commingle it all.
So talk to me about Industrious, the concept. And as you were building it out, there's another major co-working space named WeWork. Full disclosure, that was the first place that we started out. We have made our way over to Industrious and are loving the experience so far. Talk to me about how you approached the growth of Industrious, especially in that time period where we saw this sort of massive growth in the co-working space.
So we really believed that the most interesting space in the industry was for like really high-end space where companies would say, hey, this is about as good, if not better, than if I did it myself. It's not that it's quicker. It's not that it's cheaper. It's just, hey, these people are experts and the workplace experience I'm going to have is better if I use it from an expert than if I did it myself. And that's a high bar, but we spent so much time trying to pass that test that I do think over time we were able to build a product that we feel extremely proud of, that we think in most places at most times delivers on that. Vis-a-vis WeWork, can I give a 30-second digression on competition and what it's like to run a business with a big, heavy competitor?
Yeah.
We had this metaphor we always used, which is that Michael Phelps, I don't know, I might get the years wrong, but in the 2004 Olympics, he did the 100 meters in 53 seconds, and that was like clear gold medal territory. For the next 4 years, all the other swimmers around the world train and train and train to beat 53 seconds. They show up at the 2008 Olympics, and 5 of them beat 53 seconds. So if he had done his gold medal time from the previous Olympics, he would have lost to 5 different people. The problem is he was also training, so he did it in 47 seconds and won gold once again. And it's just a reminder, I think, that if you spend too much time looking to the lane to your left or right and trying to figure out what are the people on either side of you doing, you're actually going to not get as far as if you just said, what could I do to be better? So there was a lot of noise around WeWork. There were definitely moments of anxiety where it was like, hey, am I doing something wrong here? Because they're either playing 3D chess or they are way out on the risk curve doing stuff that I would not want to be doing, but mostly just focused on how do we build a great business.
And it turns out it appeared to be that latter, the risk curve. Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's run by a different person, and I think it might be being run in a quite a different way, but in its heyday, they were doing stuff that admittedly did end up coming back to haunt them.
And how were you trying to compete, and how today does Industrious still try to compete versus WeWork versus other competitors? How do you frame what an Industrious experience is like?
It's a few things. So one is it does tend to be a little more expensive than competitors, and I think that's something we've had to deal with over the years. It is a more premium product. I think I'm a big believer in premium, not luxury. If you go to buy a Bentley or Rolls-Royce cannot articulate how it's rational that you should pay $500,000 for a car. If you go to buy an Audi, they can say, hey, this is more than a Hyundai. But if you look at the quality of the leather, if you look at how long the car is going to last, I can make a value argument to you. I'm a big believer in products that are a little more expensive, that are premium products, where you're able to say you're still getting actually maybe the best value in the industry in terms of quality for the price. That's where we try to position ourselves. And when I think about what quality means at work, we could go on forever. I think it's a place where you feel you belong. I think it's a place where you feel empowered to do the things you want to do. And we're not every minute, but once in a while, you kind of feel a little bit like delighted. There's some happiness, there's some joy, there's some fun in workplaces, which historically were kind of a little too serious, I would argue.
So we are now 5 years post-pandemic. which is pretty remarkable. I should say I started Mo News. I didn't even know it was going to be Mo News, but I started just doing news on Instagram on my couch during COVID.
I love that story.
And again, solving a problem, which is my friends, and family were all like, we don't know what to believe.
Right.
Like, can you set up a news service where like there's reliable information?
Yeah.
Right. And so now there has been this whole return to office push. I'm curious as to where Industrious is falling in that and what you're seeing, what trend lines you're seeing when it comes to the return to office. Have we found sort of a happy medium? Are trend lines continuing to go in a certain direction back to the office? And by the way, geographically speaking, do you see different trend lines happening across the country?
I have a lot of opinions about this subject, as you can imagine. And just one piece of context for listeners is that in January, Industrious sold to CBRE, the largest real estate company in the world. And I now run a segment called Building Operations and Experience, which is all of CBRE's building operating businesses, property management, facilities management, Industrious. It's we basically run 8 billion square feet of buildings, which for context, downtown Philadelphia is like, let's say, 40 million square feet of commercial space. So it's like 200 downtown Philadelphias mushed together. So obviously we have an enormous amount of data about what people are doing, what's working, what isn't. And what I would say is that I think we've kind of pushed past this argument of work from home, not work from home, et cetera. I think if you look at the data, the vast majority of businesses, people are coming in sometimes, but not 5 days a week. And I personally love that. I'm such a believer in the democratization of the way companies are run and putting power in people's hands to elect what works for them in their life versus coercive measures where you basically tell people like down to the minute what they should be doing. I don't think that's the right setup for human flourishing, and I don't think it's the right setup for getting great work done. And if you look at the data, that is what most companies are doing. And if you want to get even more sort of day by day about it, people tend to be coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and much less on Monday and way less on Friday. And that's like true around the world.
That's true around the world. That's true urban versus suburban.
Yes.
You're seeing that across the board.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is the pitch that you've seen that's been most effective in getting people back to the office? Is it about community? Is it about productivity? Is it a little bit of both?
So I will start with what's not effective. I actually think productivity is by far the least effective argument, because the problem is almost everyone on earth had some period of time in 2020, maybe all the way through 2021, where they were working from home and they know they were productive. So saying to them, you can't really get your work done unless you're here in an office, falls on deaf ears because you're fighting against people's actual lived experience.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
which we've seen from like, whether it was Elon Musk at Doge, we've seen a lot out of Silicon Valley. I think what Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan has said something similar around that as well.
But on the contrary, I think arguments about what you're going to enjoy over the coming years, I think most people do not want to spend the next decade in their living room. So it's less an argument than saying, hey, we get it. You don't want to spend the next 10 years in your living room doing 8 hours of back-to-back Zoom calls. You want to see other people. You want to, when you get out of your house and you go to work, one of the other things that happens is you're also more likely to go to the jazz club afterwards. You're also more likely to go to that event that's happening in Central Park. So it's almost like getting out your front door is the doorway to the city you live in, the community you're part of. I think arguments that say you're going to love it, you're going to make more friends, you're going to have a more fulfilling work life, tend to be much more powerful than negative arguments about lack of productivity from home.
Yeah, I mean, another aspect of this is also creating a culture. And also, like, as the founder now of a company, it's like, what culture am I creating here? And how challenging is it to create a culture when, everyone is zooming in from their, various living rooms?
Yeah, I think about going to college, for example, like the data on graduation rates for purely online colleges is really bad. I mean, this is stale, but back when I worked in higher education, University of Phoenix was like 8% versus where people are at least spending some of the time meeting their classmates, going to the student activities center. You feel you're part of an institution. You feel more connected to it. You feel more invested in it. I think that idea of my work is work, but workplaces and companies are institutions, just like colleges are, just like nonprofits are. What is this institution? Is it an institution I want to be part of? Do I feel some connection to it? It's almost impossible to craft that, I think, without some in-person component.
Curious on the, pitch that you make to businesses about a co-working space versus just sort of renting a traditional commercial space. What are the advantages to, plugging into one of your Industrious across the country?
My version of it is dead simple. I don't believe that that companies with 300, 400 person teams should be trying to put them in shared settings. Because what I think is there's a critical mass of people above which you can offer a good workplace experience and below which you just don't have enough people to do it. When you're a 10-person team, if you try to go rent your own space, it's grim. You're talking about a couple desks, maybe one meeting room. You're not going to create an espresso bar and secret speakeasy rooms and really beautiful pitch rooms and things like that.
Where are the secret speakeasy rooms?
We have them in our first 15 Industriouses, and then too many people were doing like extracurricular activities in them, so we did have to stop that.
Okay.
But long story short, I think the main argument to me is just like I have a backyard in our place in Brooklyn, and it kind of sucks. Me and my wife never go back there, but we live near Fort Greene Park and we go almost every day. There's just lots of things where a really wonderful shared setting, you can offer a better product than a sort of tiny, underinvested, completely private setting.
In the profile recently done of you in the Wall Street Journal, you talked about industrious spaces being designed down to specific details, natural lighting, greenery, a variety of workspaces. Curious to what extent you've looked at the science behind the design of workspaces, and what are some things that might surprise folks out there about design aspects and how they impact productivity, community, all of the above?
That's a great question. Yeah. So we've delivered 50 million days at work, and actually that's one of my passions is that you look at how most businesses are run, you manage what you measure. And I think the physical world is at a dearth of measurement. So if I could accomplish one thing in my career, I would love to be able to codify and sort of measure the way that we interact with physical space and the feelings it evokes in us and the behaviors it evokes, sort of in a way that's commensurate with how people do, measure other things in business. I think a couple things maybe that would jump out. One is that days evolve over the course of a day. The ways that people are using space evolve. So I think the most important observation is there isn't a single answer. You can't spend 10 hours in any room. You can't spend 10 hours at any lighting level. You can't spend 10 hours with any specific volume music on. The only way to do it is to say people have to move around a little and be in spaces that are right for that moment, where the lights are a little brighter. If it's a bright day on, they're a little, whatever that is, that the volume is louder. If they're in a social setting, it's quieter. If they're trying to do heads down work. And that observation, I think, is it is different than going to a restaurant for 2 hours. You are spending 8, 9, 10 hours a day there all day, every day. You have to be sensitive to what kind of work is a person doing in that moment? What time of day is it? What's their likely energy level? And then match the features of that space, the way you're providing service to them to that moment, basically. A couple quirkier ones would be when we started the business, everyone wanted to be at the top of the building. They wanted views. And then we started to see that the average Industrious customer back in 2013, 2014 might leave the building once a day to get lunch. Now the average customer leaves 3-4 times a day. So all of a sudden the action, the space we're in now is on the second floor of the building, I think. That's much more appealing now because people actually do is they work for 3 hours, they pop out and meet a friend, they come back in, they go for a walk in the park, they come back in. And so people are starting to stitch their work life together with other parts of their life. And that thing about moving in and out and sort of building workplaces that connect to the other parts of your life is where the action is.
Going back to your journey for a second, we talked about your journey literally around the world, building Industrious. Talk to me about being an entrepreneur, building up Industrious and how you approached acquisition. Take me to either the CBRE conversation or previous offers. When did you know that, this was the right amount? How were you thinking about potential acquisition over time?
First I will say Industrious bought 7 or 8 businesses over the years and was never very good at it. A lot of those didn't go well. And so I had that in the back of my mind. Hey, I've seen, and I used to be an M&A lawyer, so I've seen the way this stuff can go awry. So I probably approached selling the business with a really critical eye of I really want to watch. You can sort of fall in love with the dollars. You can fall in love with the argument for why it's a good idea and lose sight of, hey, is this actually going to go well or not? So I think it needed to be a reasonable return for all of our investors. The price had to make sense, but it also had to make sense to the buyer. So when we negotiated, I wouldn't say, I think all parties felt like we came to something good, which I think is a sign of a good deal, versus one party looks back 2 months later and feels they got their face ripped off or something. And then I think we really thought about, hey, this business, I hope, is generational. I hope there are people 40 years from now that get to delight in getting to be part of an Industrious. So the home for this business has to be one that's built for longevity, which makes some of these private equity firms that are like, we're going to lard this thing up with debt and we're going to give it a shot and the whole thing's going to blow up or be, a triple bagger by 2 years from now. That was really not the home we wanted. CBRE is the largest real estate firm in the world. And I think being part of a platform like that was very exciting. So I guess I would finish by saying I did not allow myself to think about, hey, personally for me, what's exciting, what's not, what do I want to do? Anytime an entrepreneur or someone else brought that up with me, I would shut down that conversation. I have employees I have to represent. I have investors who bet real money on us. It's not my place to be like, well, I don't want to have to fly to Dallas too often or whatever. It just so happens I am loving my new job. But when you're selling a business, it's all about all of the constituents you owe something to, all the constituents who believed in you, and what decision is going to sort of honor that commitment they made to you and the business in the sort of most extreme way. And this particular sale really passed that test.
And then what's it like to level up from, was it overseeing a few hundred employees or a few thousand employees to...
Yeah.
Just give me the numbers, like
yes.
your what you were doing at Industrious and now your role at CBRE.
So this particular jump was discontinuous and a bigger jump than probably 99.9% of M&A deals, in the sense that the CEO of CBRE, Bob Salentic, had a particular view of what role he wanted me in, which was to basically reorganize the business and create this segment that was all of these building operating businesses. Those in combination are about 100,000 employees, more than 20 billion in gross revenue. And Industrious was 700 employees. So yeah, I think depending on how you define it, it was about 1,000x jump. And I was really scared of it, mostly because I didn't want to let Bob down. I didn't want to let my new colleagues down.
How do you even get your head around those numbers? That's pretty remarkable.
Someone has to take over the Defense Department when they get appointed, Secretary of Defense or something. So obviously there are other things that look like that where you just wake up.
And by the way, at 100,000 employees, like that is bigger than a number of federal departments.
Yeah,
you'd be one of the larger cabinet secretaries.
Yes, that's very fair. Yeah, right. It's definitely bigger than the FBI or NYPD or something like that. I think what I would say is you often experience these things as the circle of 10, 12, 15 people around you. Now, those people in this case are extremely senior, are in themselves running $1 billion business. Mm-hmm. But I think that was what helped me get over the hump. Is my job is to set the strategy. And my job is to make sure that the right people are in those leadership seats, and then make sure that we're being good stewards of CBRE's capital. And if you squint, that's basically not that different than what running a mid-size company is. You just have to sort of break it down into its... just like when you live in a 350 million person country, you've got your state and your city and your neighborhood. You almost have to approach it in the same way.
As you now have this sort of, 100,000 foot view of what's happening when it comes, especially to commercial real estate, there has been a concern about just, especially in some cities, a whole bunch of available real estate, what's going to happen there financially. How is CBRE looking at the state of play right now in 2025?
I think that this people will have potentially heard before, but what you see is there's zero vacancy in really nice buildings, and there's a lot of vacancy in buildings that are 3 avenues over from where you'd want to be, that are not places you'd want to be.
That are 40, 50 years and need renovation. Yeah.
And it just that just comes right back to that point of people, you're trying to create workplaces people want to come to. You've lost your ability to say, I know you don't want to go work on First Avenue, but unfortunately you have to. And therefore those places are challenged and will continue to be challenged. Places that only sing or only work when you're forcing someone to go there are going to continue to be challenged. I think everything else, the evidence is that things are kind of headed in a very healthy direction for those. And then I think the other piece is, I might be biased. I kind of feel like the country is actually in an evolution about the importance of the built world. I think about the Googles, the Metas of the world. 10, 15 years ago, you really could make the argument like these companies live in ones and zeros. These are digital businesses that live only in the digital world. And you look at today and they're buying land and they're trying to figure out how to create power plants to make their data centers run. And they're all doing manufacturing and having to, we've kind of turned a corner where the built world inputs to every big company in the world has sort of elevated in importance. And my dream is for CBRE to be at the center of that, to say, hey, if you're a business that needs to rely on the built world to make your business tick, we can be there to help make sure that goes well and help make the most of it.
So I think you're a fellow elder millennial. You graduated college 04?
Yes, I'm 43.
All right, so me too. Born 82, graduated college 04. We're in sort of that like the eldest year of millennials, right. But like trained under the tutelage of the boomers, right? Like we came up through them. Curious, as you built Industrious initially, when all the talk was millennials, now all the talk is Gen Z, what you're finding also in your new role in terms of what Gen Z wants, how Gen Z is changing the workplace, and are there even specific examples of things that you're needing to renovate or look anew because of the way Gen Z is approaching work?
Let me start by saying when you run a company, you do have to be cognizant of the age range of people in the company. And there was a moment I remember getting up on stage at karaoke with all my colleagues and singing a Dashboard confessional song and like looking out and realizing like, oh my God, like half the employees have never heard of Dashboard confessional, and like not being phony and weird and trying to memorize Chappell Roan songs just to prove like you can hang with the youngins or whatever, but really being aware of the fact that not every cultural reference you have is going to keep being relevant as you get into middle age and beyond. As far as what those sort of Gen Z people entering the workforce want out of a workplace, I think it's even more pronounced that they do not want to spend the next decade in their living room. Like by and large, those are the people that moved to New York City and they want to get out and they want the night out in the Lower East Side and they want to take advantage of the world. That
assumption that Gen Z is cool with just like not coming to the office, like that's been flipped on its head.
It's people our age that are a little bit trapped sitting on their couch every night watching Netflix. I think, and maybe nesting a little, I think actually Gen Z wants experiences. They want things, they're going to music festivals, and I think understanding that the workplace is an experience just like anything else and trying to really listen and understand what are those experiences that people want is the sort of key unlock. And I think maybe also understanding it's a social space. It doesn't mean you have to do boozy happy hours every day. But if you're 24, 25, you're starting your post-college life, you want connections, you want to meet more people, and workplaces need to be able to deliver on that.
Yeah, I'm curious. You guys have this CBRE Industrious Building Experience Lab.
Yeah.
You announced it recently. More data-driven, expert ways to run workplaces. Translate that, for practical purposes.
So this harkens back to what we were talking about earlier, where people are not great at measuring the physical environment. So there's lots of just like, I think people probably want incandescent bulbs versus fluorescent, or I think they want XYZ. And I think the Building Experience Lab, which is...
Does anyone want fluorescent?
No, fair enough. But I think like I hired a woman named Annie Dean to run it. She's really special, I think is the best workplace leader I've seen at specifically saying, we got to get into the data on it. And Annie and I both believe this is not just about measuring how often do people come in and then you take a 10-question survey of, do I like my workplace? We are at the cusp of being able to measure stress levels in an office based on body temperature, XYZ, being able to measure how much collaboration is or isn't happening. How many people's first names do you know after 3 months of working in a good workplace versus a bad workplace? And is it the case that a workplace that engenders more connections, by the end of 3 months, you're like, oh, that's Becky. She has 2 kids. I love her. Versus, oh, that's Becky from accounting or something like that. The Building Experience Lab, more than anything else, is going to push the envelope of measurement of what makes for a great day at work, so you can actually recreate it. And I would finish by saying for listeners, it. Like anyone who's listening to this, you have days where you're like, oh my God, I got so much done today. Like I was on top of the world. And you have days where you're like, what did I just do? I just worked for 8 hours. I can't even, I have nothing to show for it. I looked at YouTube. I started things. I didn't finish them.
I deleted 10 emails.
Like everyone wants to understand at some level, what is the contributing factors to those days where I was on top of the world? How do I get more of those? And what are the contributing factors to those kind of crappy, didn't go anywhere days? And how do I excise the components of the day that cause that kind of day to happen? We want to put data behind that and actually start moving that thought forward in a rigorous way.
Are there any, pieces of advice that you give to business owners about creating a healthy work environment? Now, especially if you have this perspective where it's not even just running Industrious, but running all CBRE, like tens of thousands of businesses. Yeah. What are lessons that you've gleaned from all of them?
People need private space. I just think, I'm a huge extrovert. And if I want to,
because there was this move towards open workspaces for a very long time.
Too many workplaces, especially in the US, are just giant rows of desks with nowhere to escape to. People need places to escape to. And if you're on a budget, you can do it with, little felt nooks in the corner. You can have really nice phone booths. You can have anything in between. But, you can go sit in an open area in the Delta Sky Lounge while you're waiting for your flight for an hour. You can't do it all day, every day with no respite. I think that's very, very, very true. I think the next is you have to actually listen to your employees. What I see all the time is people hire a company to do surveys or they do it themselves. And then they just take the parts of the survey they agree with. And they're like, people keep complaining that our coffee is shit, but I don't mind it. And it's like, if you're going to ask people and then trust what they're saying as their experience of the space and actually respond to it. Because the final thing I'd say is if you ask people how they're doing and you ask them for feedback and then nothing happens, they're not even going to respond the next time. People need to believe they're in a system where their voice can be heard and then they can see the impact of the fact that they were listened to. Then you get in a virtuous cycle. And then your workplace gets better over time because your architects are never going to get it right. It's a living thing just like anything else. That more than anything else, you want a feedback loop and a system that every month is a little bit better than the preceding month.
And as we talk about the future of work here, how are you thinking about AI, especially as we're at these early stages here, about the impact it's having for productivity, the human AI relationship, and then as we talk about built spaces, which is your world, how that potentially could impact things?
I think the biggest thing I would say is I really do believe in personalization. I think I was kind of saying that earlier, that a space is for a specific person, a specific moment, doing a specific thing. And I just don't think there's that many places that are like, this is ideal for everyone at all times for everything. And I think in the physical world, in the workplace world, the great promise of AI is actually being able to accomplish that. To say, Mo walked in the room, it's 11. I know from his calendar that he's actually writing a memo right now. I'm going to adjust the lighting and the setting XYZ for that. Or he has a guest coming and I'm going to automatically, signal to the people running the space that there should be a cappuccino waiting for that person because Mo flagged.
Is anyone there yet? I mean, this sounds amazing.
The technology is there. Yeah. It's just, more than digital things that live purely in a digital world. Yeah. It's easier to apply AI and very quickly move it forward. Things where you then have to take the outputs of the ones and zeros and affect something in physical space is always going to lag behind. So I think things are moving forward. I think Industrious will probably be one of the leaders in the space. I think CBRE will. But I think this is the year where people will start to see more and more examples of that. And probably if you stayed at a really nice hotel, you've had flavors of it where you're like, oh my God, this person seems superhuman. They're not superhuman. They're probably a really good person that cares a lot about giving you a good customer experience that's powered by a really good digital back end that's giving them lots of information and nudges for how to serve you.
Curious, having watched We Crash, you're depicted. So, take us to the truth. So there's an episode where you're on a jet, at least the show depicts you on a jet or someone playing you, sitting across from Adam Newman of WeWork. What's the truth behind, was there an actual interaction there?
So first, it is so surreal to see yourself played on TV. And one of the quirky things is that, to the best of my memory, no one ever reached out to say, hey man, we are casting a TV show. There's going to be a character in the show named Jamie Hodari, not Jamie Hodari, not some your full name. And the only reason I found out is because we had a former employee that left work to become an actor. And he called me and he's like, hey, would you say that your name is common? I'm like, no, I'm the only Jamie Hodari I know of. And he's like, well, then this is weird, but I'm at a audition right now. And there's the call sheet for the next auditions. And they're casting for a character named Jamie Hodari. And I'm like, okay, clearly that's me. And then I waited and the show came out and they played me as like a huge nerd. I am pretty nerdy, so I didn't, but by and large, I was like happy to play the nerdy straight guy,
But again, the production company didn't like reach out to you to like get to know you at all.
This actor obviously watched video of me and I think did a good job of sort of like capturing my mannerisms and stuff. It's pretty much all real. It's a little fictionalized, but certainly the plane is real. Adam and I had a lot of interactions where the premise of it was like, you better play ball or else we are going to bury you. And that particular scene, actually, what he said on the plane is basically like, I have hundreds of people on speed dial. And if I push the button, they're all going to call every one of your customers and we're going to give them a year free. And you're going to lose a third of your customers. Then we'll call everyone that remains and we'll give them 2 years free. Don't get any ideas here, Mo. That's not, that was a past thing. No. Yeah. And they actually did do it after that flight. And thank God that it didn't impact the business as much as I was worried it would. But that was a tough competitor. And he actually did say some version of like, I'm going to destroy your business and destroy your soul or something that was like maybe one of the most confrontational face-to-face interactions I've ever had in my life.
So that freaks you out. What do you attribute the fact that most of your customers or a certain number of customers stayed with you despite the offers there?
I think some of it is like in college, there was this space that had like half price sushi and it was like, we were students, like that was very appealing. And we all kind of stopped going after a while. Like, I think WeWork's product quality has gotten better, but I think ultimately there are lots of versions of things where people discount, they'll give you free trials, and kind of you're like, I want to go to the sushi restaurant I want to go to. I want to go to the vacation I want to go to. I don't really care if Super 8 Motel is running a promotion. Like it's just not, and I think where you work every day is a very important decision. So for the most part, what turned out to be true is people, they care about price, they're running businesses, but they want to base their business where they want to base their business. That protected us in the end.
I mean, we'll end with this. We've discussed a bit about the future of the workplace. Anything that you're seeing sort of short term here in the next couple of years that people should be looking out for? Any interesting experiments you see or that you're attempting in the CBRE world, in the Industrious world, and you're curious about how where these things are going?
From the point of view of an individual, I don't run a workplace function. I go to work every day. What am I going to see? I think one thing that I would love to see that's a trend that's coming, but I'd love to see it accelerate is the rise of like neighborhood workplaces. Wherever we have been able to create an Industrious in Prospect Heights in Brooklyn, in Evanston, outside of Chicago, in Beverly Hills, they basically sell out immediately because a lot of people want to live in basically 15-minute cities. If I go to a workplace that's a 40-minute commute from home, not only do I have to commute, if I meet a person there, their kid probably doesn't go to my kid's school. We probably don't go to the same yoga class. Whereas if you work in your community, it's so cool because the people you meet, you're like, I'm probably going to see you at my favorite bar. Our kids might go to the same school. And I think being able to offer that to more Americans over time, really high quality workplaces that are in their communities, and we explode a little bit of this traditional American, sort of financial district or CBD versus mixed use neighborhood thing and mush them together more. People will love that. It'll be good for business. It'll get people back to the office more. So that is happening. And people, if you live in Greenwich, Connecticut, there aren't really workplaces there now. By a couple of years from now, I bet there will be more places to work, for example.
Yeah, no, I made the pitch to you just before we got started here. Like I commute within Manhattan, but it's still, 25 minutes each way on the subway to Midtown. So if you can get up into the 80s and the Upper East Side, we'd be very grateful up there.
Yes, yeah. We're on it. We're on it.
So along those lines about the, experiments happening out there, some of the trend lines you're seeing, what personally are you hoping for? What is your vision, Jamie, for where workplaces are going?
So first, I can't pretend that in fourth grade, when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I was like, my dream is to work in coworking and facilities management. And I used to work in the nonprofit.
You would have been the only fourth grader to lay that out.
So I have had to think a lot about why does this get me out of bed every day? What do I find really motivating about it? And I think at some level, it's about not just acknowledging the importance of the built world, but that fundamentally making it more human. You really look at some of these landlords, people who own buildings, and they treat them like they're just piles of bricks and pieces of paper to trade in and out. And the most extreme thing you see now is if you go to sell a building in New York that's empty, you basically can't sell it, because what people have had to come to terms with is the pile of bricks, the steel, the elevators are meaningless, but for the people that walk into that space and use it every day. And so all of these things, these factories, these office buildings, these logistics centers, they're only valuable in as much as they offer service to the people that use them. If they offer something meaningful to people, either the beneficiaries of the work that's done there or the people that actually use them every day. And I see a transformation on that front. I'm excited about it. And I just think if we can accomplish that shift to saying these buildings are places for people, they exist for people, and every decision that's made about it should begin and end with the people that enter and exit that building every day, I think we're going to be much better off, and they'll do better financially. So it's not like there's even a conflict there.
So that's a philosophical view, but for practical purposes, translate that for me.
Here's a good example. People own a building. They decide they have $20 million to put into it. Historically, the thing you do is you go to a couple brokers and say, I want to go sell this building in a few years. What do you think is going to look good? They'd say, okay, go get, Florentine marble and clad the whole lobby in marble. And that was like a standard playbook. Then people started looking for the deputy head of marketing that works on the 7th floor of that building. Did their life change in any way at the other end of that $20 million when the lobby was now clad in marble? No. Maybe they find it oppressive and a little inhuman and a little bit too big timing. And what they actually wanted was something that felt more inviting. That, hey, why don't you spend that money to create the speakeasy, to create a yoga studio, to actually don't even spend it on physical objects at all, spend $200,000 a year to have someone come in every Wednesday and, do headshots for us or do XYZ. And it's just starting with listening and saying, hey, this building exists to serve the people that use it. I think you're already starting to see that move towards away from what's going to impress the CEO or what's going to impress investors to what is actually going to make the deputy head of marketing want to come in.
Jamie, thanks for chatting.
Thank you.